house is worth whatever it's worth, right? Whoever sells it. Wrong. I'm Charlie. Welcome to Moving Home with Charlie, and thank you for coming.
Charlie Landing grew up in Sussex, is the founder of Best Agent and presenter of Moving Home with Charlie.
If you want to find one of these guys, look out for those compassionate professionals. All estate agents are not the same.
So Charlie, what would be your advice for people interested in buying new builds right now?
Don't overpay. Do buy, but don't overpay. That's why I say disregard the guff. Read into the numbers and look, and it's buried. The bad news is buried in the small print, okay?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Property Press Awards.
They may or may not be telling the truth, but you should form your own view. Get out and view, get out and view, get out and view. You cannot be in a position to make offers and have the offers accepted if you're not viewing. Just be out there viewing. Pay attention to the back of the class. If you've not been watching my videos, I did one just a couple of days ago. Disregard the guff, guys. Good evening, everybody. Apologies for the irregular timing of this evening's live stream, but circumstances dictate. In this evening's video, I'm going to be talking about an interesting piece of data that I've discovered on my own website, on the Best Agent website, on the Best Agent All Homes Index. And I'm I'm in a hotel in Preston in Lancashire. And I've been in Lancashire today. I've been talking to estate agents today in Lancashire about no valuations, that kind of stuff. And it's interesting because the data that's come out on the Best Agent website today, I just decided to have a look and compare it with exactly this time last year. And I noticed two things. First of all, the raw average, the mean asking price of all homes on the market in England that haven't sold, so they're still showing us for sale, has come down 6% compared to this time last year, right? Now, there's no other index that measures this. Rightmove's index is asking prices only, like this one, like Best Agents is, but Rightmove's index is based purely on newly listed homes in the last 28 days before they publish it. Whereas the Best Agent All Homes Index, which we've called it that because it is every single publicly available listing in the whole country, just England, not the whole UK. So we have England, we have Wales, we don't have Northern Ireland or Scotland, but we have England. And it includes, so the interesting thing is that it includes price reductions because it's a snapshot that we take every so often. And it is a snapshot of asking prices that day for the whole country, every single property in the market. We break them down between for sale properties and under offer properties, because that gives you much more of an indication of what's happening in the market. Anyway, what's interesting is that the average price for unsold homes compared to a year ago is 6% lower. The average asking price for homes showing as under offer or sold, but still showing publicly, has only come down by 1%. Now, that doesn't mean the sold prices are down 1%. It means the published asking price is down 1% on a year ago. And whilst I don't have any significant data to back this up, anecdotal data from talking to estate agents is that of the properties that are selling, they are being agreed at a larger discount to the published asking price than they were a year ago. Now, there's no smoking gun here. I think it is we can also compare it with the median prices, which we'll come on to in a minute. I'll get up on the screen, we'll go through it. But there can be a number of different factors causing all of these moves. But to me, I'm hoping, and I'm being optimistic and positive about this, I'm hoping that it means that the overvaluing problem is starting to gradually improve, right? The wild overpricing of stuff that just never sells, that is starting to improve because there is a So the gap has closed, okay, by 7%, if you follow my maths. The gap between the average asking price of unsold homes in England and the average asking price of sold homes in England has closed by 7%. That's a good thing. That improves the chances of transactions happening. Transaction volumes up until the budget was announced, transaction volumes were kind of doing okay, holding up okay, slightly better than last year. They've now dropped off a cliff, but that's only because of the budget. So this is interesting, and I think it's especially interesting when you compare it with the other indices. Now, another important thing to note about these figures, and I've got the exact figures, I'll get them off the screen in a minute, is that these are raw numbers. Right? There's no weighting, there's no mix adjustment, there's no hedonic regression, which are things that are used in lots of the other indices, where they twist and manipulate and have this very opaque calculation. This is bog standard, raw, average, mean, and median. Okay, so I just think that's a more honest and more transparent approach, and we can see what's actually happening. Now, it's still a national average, and therefore it is as useless as all the other national averages are when you're talking locally, but it still has an interesting, I think, interesting from a national point of view, from someone who works in the industry point of view, about the behavior of agents, of overvaluing, and of the possibility of transaction volumes improving. Now, who do we have here this evening? Good evening, Victoria. Good evening, Sharon. Good evening, Jim Bobbaruni and Patricia. Hi there. Right, let's get some of these numbers up on the screen and have a little look. So, and by the way, got questions? Any moving questions? I'm here for your moving questions always. So if you've got questions about your move, just ask me. Okay. So, what you're looking at there is a snapshot of last year's figures. Okay. Sales available means properties showing as for sale. And this time last year, there were 420,000 unsold properties on the market for sale in England. The median asking price of those properties was 350,000. And I think the median, by the way, is a much more helpful number than the average, because look at the average, it's a silly price. The average asking price of unsold properties a year ago was £467,952 in England. That's a year ago. Okay. Then we look at what they are today. And 467,000 has dropped to 439,000 from a year ago. Okay. And the number of properties has gone up from 420,000, I think it was. Yeah, 420,000 to 496,000. So that's a really big increase in the number of properties on the market compared to a year ago that are not sold. And that increase in supply, of course, has a downward pressure on prices. But these prices and numbers are for properties that are not selling. Okay. And in the line above, so this line here, this is the line for properties that are sale agreed. And we have 141,000 currently showing homes showing as sold or under offer in England, compared to just 96,000 a year ago, I think it was. Sorry, only 91,000 a year ago. That's a massive increase. Now, why would that be? That would be because the budget has slammed the brakes on transactions, and something like 50% of people currently moving have pressed pause on their move. And so what you've got there is you've got a big piling up number of properties that are agreed but haven't exchanged yet. Sorry, excuse me 1 second. And the average price of properties, the average asking price of properties that are showing as sold a year ago was 361,000, and today is 357,000. That's a drop of £4,000. That's just over 1%. Okay, that's on the average. Now, what's also interesting is that the median prices have changed significantly. So a year ago, the median asking price for unsold properties, so for sale properties, was £350,000. It's now £330,000. Okay, so that's a £20,000 drop in the median asking price of properties that are not selling. But the median asking price of properties that are selling is exactly the same as it was a year ago, right? A year ago, it was £300,000, and today it's still £300,000. Now, that will be concealing what's happening to the difference between the asking price and the sold price on the properties that are selling. And the information that I've seen shows me that people are selling at a bigger discount to their asking price than before. So this is not showing us what's happening to actual transaction prices. There's no national data for that yet. In due course, I hope the best agent will have that data. But I think that's interesting, right? So the median gap has closed from 50 grand difference to a 30 grand difference between unsold and sold in England. And the average has done the same. Anyway, that's make of that what you will. Of course, that's the whole of England, so it's the north and the south, and that's concealing the different markets in the north and the south. That's including London. That's every property in England, right? Flats, houses, leasehold, freehold, north, south, town, country, urban, rural. It's everything. It's just England. Okay. Any questions on that? We do have a question. So 007 Mick Ness on YouTube says, do you believe that the increase is due to second homes by the sea? Sorry, what increase? Oh, the increase in sale agreed, you mean? Well, remember, sales agreed is not completed transactions. I think what's happening is the pipeline, which is the terminology used by estate agents when a property has a price agreed on it, a sale agreed, but hasn't yet exchanged. I think the pipelines have got much bigger. The number of properties in that pipeline has increased massively. But do you believe, Mick asks, do you believe that the increase is due to second homes by the sea and the increase in council tax on landlords getting out of renting? I mean, that's a highly localized phenomenon. And yes, that's creating a lot of properties coming onto the market, but it's not necessarily increasing the number of sales, that particular phenomenon. Sharon Smith asks, does this include new build? Yes, it does. It does include new build. Okay, so let me just show you a bit more on so am I on the right page here? Yes, I have, yeah. So what I also wanted to show you on here is that, again, this is the only index that shows the whole country. It's the whole of England. It's the only one that shows you the total number, exactly the total number of properties included in that average calculation. It's the only one that separates out sale agreed and for sale, because it's much more interesting to see what's happening with the prices of stuff that's actually selling. It's the only one that separates out median and average, and that is, I think, for an obvious reason, right? The average price is too high, because the average, the mathematical mean of asking prices is disproportionately skewed upwards by the small number of very highly priced properties that are on the market, especially on the unsold stuff, look, right? But the median price is much closer to the median price. In fact, I think that's actually quite close to the median, the ONS median price for England. It's also 3.5 properties for sale for every one that's showing as sold. So there we are. You can make it up what you will. Any other questions on that, guys? Not many questions tonight. I know I've caught you off guard by doing this at an unusual time. Okay. Let me just go back to the caption there. I've been having conversations with a lot of agents recently since the events I did a couple of weeks ago in Manchester, Bristol, and London. And a very common conversation with the agents has been that, and these are agents that are generally doing quite well, their current processes are deeply entrenched and deeply ingrained around the strategy of providing valuations to sellers, because that's what sellers want. And some of these agents are doing quite well, despite being in the valuation ship fight. Who's got the highest valuation? Who's got the lowest fee? Some of them are doing quite well because they are better than average estate agents. They're delivering better than average results, and therefore they're doing okay. Their fees aren't too low, and they're doing all right. And when we discuss the no valuations approach, some of those agents are saying, look, we completely understand and see that this makes sense. But to undo the processes that we've spent years putting in place and replace with these processes is too much of a risk. So we're just going to carry on as we are. And when I brought up the subject of saying, well, hang on a second, you all agree, don't you, that the industry as a whole is struggling? Transaction times are too long. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Fees are too low. Yes, yes, yes. And success ratios, completion rates are too low. Yes, we all agree with that. Okay, and I've now presented you with an alternative that you agree improves all of those metrics, but you're saying we're going to stay as we are. Now, when you roll out that phenomenon to the whole industry, you've got an industry that is so deep, and they really are deeply ingrained around this providing valuations. Even though they admit that going down that route of providing valuations is going to cause transactions to take longer, they are saying that it's too risky and dangerous to change their processes, even though it makes sense. Why? Because sellers want a valuation. Even though the data shows that those valuations are inaccurate and lead to much longer transaction times and a lower degree of certainty of moving, if we don't tell the sellers what they expect to hear, we're not going to get their business. I would love to know what you guys think about that. I would seriously love to know what you think about that. Because what that message is saying is, we know it's all shit, but we're not going to change. That's literally what they're saying. Why? Because our business is doing all right and we don't want to rock the boat. That, ladies and gentlemen, in a nutshell, is why the property market is so dysfunctional. It's why more people aren't moving. And the industry's response is, oh, well, we're not going to change it because changing it would be too risky. Even when you can see the upside is massive, like twice as many people would move house. Think about what that would do for a estate agency. Transaction times would drop in half. Think about what that would do for your estate agency. Fall through rates would reduce massively. Think about what that would do for your estate agency. You want to stay as you are. Now, from an individual estate agent's point of view, I do understand it, right? They are saying, we're doing okay. We're selling most of the properties that we list. We're getting a good enough fee and our customers aren't unhappy. Changing to the no valuations approach would require retraining our staff, changing all of our marketing, changing our systems that are built around providing valuation prices and data. And in the short term, will probably lead to us losing business to our other competitors who are still giving the valuations that sellers want. So can you see the problem, right? It is a legitimate problem. Right now, estate agents are having a rough time, but especially because of the budget and everything else. So what they're saying is that the cost of changing course is too great. Now, there are some agents who said to me, this no valuations approach is brilliant because we're quite new. We've been around for a while, but not very long, so we aren't too entrenched in what we're doing. Or they're saying we're suffering from the overvaluing problem really badly, where the bad overvaluers are just cleaning up everything and we're not getting any business. And so I've got some agents who are embracing it, but the volume guys, the bigger guys, are going, it's too risky. Don't think we can do it. Right, you got some questions there. I'd love to know your thoughts on that, guys. I would like to know. No, we don't need them all to adopt the approach. We don't need them all. We really don't actually, and they couldn't all do it anyway because the incompetent agents out there are not capable of my approach, of the best agent approach. We don't need them all to do it. We just need the good ones to do it. Actions lacks. That's replying to your comment. Yeah, freezing my bits off up here as well. Right. Got a mover question here from Thomas Leather on YouTube, who says, thank you for putting your hand up with that. I've been using your template to put offers on houses in Walthamstow, but every time the agent makes me fill out an offer form. Is this normal? First time buyer. You don't have to do it. If you send them an offer in writing, they have to put that offer to the seller, whether you fill out a form or not. They can ask you to fill out a form, and you can say, "Look, I've given you my offer." Now, is that going to help your case? It depends. It's very annoying because what the agent's saying is, could you please do some extra work? We've got your offer, but could you go and redo all that work and put it in this form for us? Is it a paper form they're asking for, or is it an online form? I'd be curious to know. And is it all agents or just some that are doing that? Guys, this is not, I'm in a hotel. It's not my lamp. I'm in a hotel. I would never have curtains that color in a place that was mine. I'm in a hotel in Preston. Tom Rowland says, a valuation is part of price conditioning. It's to educate the buyer. Do you want to elaborate on that, Tom? Because I don't agree. But I want to just try and make sure I've understood you correctly. A valuations only exist at the moment because sellers want them. How much can you get from a house? How much can you get from a house? How much can you get from a house? Whoever says the highest number gets the business, the majority of the time. More sensible sellers are going with some people go with the middle of the three, thinking, well, that's me being realistic. No, it's still going to be too high. Some go with the lowest one, and it's still too high because they're all competing against each other. So what you're being given isn't a valuation of any sort whatsoever. It is an aspirational number that they hope they can get you, but they're going to tie you into a contract and then make you reduce your price. It's going to take longer. And My whole argument is, if you want to know what your home is worth, you will find out faster and for certain using the best agent no valuations method than you will by getting a valuation, putting it on the market and waiting for months to not get enough viewings and no offers. So if you're a seller watching this, you want to know how much you're going to get for your house. That is normal and natural and understandable, because without knowing how much you're going to get, you can't move onwards. But if you base that number on an over-optimistic valuation by an estate agent, that you are going to have to wait months to find out if it's accurate, does that improve your chances of moving or decrease your chances of moving? Compared to, under this process, 5 weeks, you know what the market for your house is. At that point, you can then make a decision. Are you going to move or not? Okay. So to sellers who want to know how much their house is worth, my approach will give you a concrete 100% accurate answer to that question in a shorter space of time than when an agent gives you a quotes valuation. The valuations are nothing more than a guess. They are wildly inaccurate. They're usually wildly over optimistic. Alexander, so by the way, it certainly isn't to educate the buyer, right? A valuation doesn't educate the buyer. Buyers don't look at prices and think, oh, I've just been educated by that price. I know that more of you are buyers than sellers watching this channel. So what do you think when you see an asking price? Do you feel educated by it? Or do you feel they're a no-hoper, I'm not even going to bother inquiring because they're being unrealistic? It does the opposite of what you're saying there, Tom. Alexander, you could invite a guest who specializes in it. I specialize in it. Was that not obvious? I have been working with agents for 25 years, giving them software systems and engaging with their teams and being in training sessions and consulting to businesses and actually helping form strategy on this exact thing. I understand it. But I'm happy to invite a guest to discuss it and debate it. The Conspiracy Factualist on YouTube says, estate agents are waking up. They can't keep kidding vendors any longer. If only they didn't overvalue in the first place. This has left a lot of vendors in no man's land. Thank you, it has. And the answer, by the way, guys, is not to stop overvaluing. It's to stop doing values at all. And instead to focus their efforts on launch prices that deliver at least 15 to 20 viewings in the first 2 weeks. That's what they should be focusing on. All the time and energy and effort they expend on coming up with a valuation is for nothing in terms of actually helping to sell a house. It achieves nothing. Because when they enter into the process of providing a valuation against another agent's valuation, it will always end up being over optimistic at best and wildly overvalued at worst, and sets expectations wrong and reduces the number of people who come through the door. So if you want an actual valuation, you need to pay a surveyor, a qualified registered valuer, for a red book valuation. You won't like the answer because it's going to be less than what agents say, but it will be a valuation. Okay. If you want to know what your house will sell for, because by the way, a value, even a paid valuation that you pay for, isn't a guarantee that that's what you can sell it for, right? It is a professional estimate of what it would sell for. And yeah, this whole process of valuing to get it's got to stop. It's got to stop. And what I've proved with Carrington's is that when you stop doing valuations, everything sells faster with more offers, so you know you've got market price. All right. Okay. So Tom's updated. Okay. Agents give valuations based on what was already sold in the area. They want to inform the buyer that this is the price a particular area will command. No, still no. They can get recently sold comparables, but there is a lot of room for manipulation in that process to justify a figure that's still optimistic. And often it's comparing it with things that aren't directly comparable. There can be one small difference in the property that can make a big difference to the price. So Alexander, when you say read the question above, please, there are lots of questions above. I don't know which one you mean. I have, oh, I see. Sorry. Okay. You didn't put question at the beginning, so I didn't know it was a question. Always put question at the beginning. All right. Off topic. Okay, sorry. Prices of flats start looking increasingly attractive, but service charges and leasehold seem to be a trap. Any chance you could make a stream on the subject? I have talked about this at great length. I don't know how long you've been watching the channel. I've talked about the problem between flats and houses and leasehold and everything else. It's really simple. Everyone's waiting to see whether or not there's going to be leasehold reform, and nobody wants to buy what is effectively a long-term rental when you buy a leasehold with an uncontrolled service charge on it. And at the moment, the market for leasehold flats in the southeast has just completely collapsed, which is why there are no new builds selling. Lots of you asking me questions about property development projects in Lancashire. LVW House Hunter says, burned former leasehold flat owner. Well done for getting out of it. Now looking for a 3-bed semi. Worst possible transition. Correct. Unfortunately, that is true. They said values would always hold in London. They did, didn't they? And I tried to tell people that that wasn't going to be the case. And everyone got cross with me and laughed at me. They said values would always hold in London. Could same happen in commuter belt for 3-bed semis in 10 years? Oh, what you mean? Could the values drop? Much less chance of that happening. I mean, compared to flats, to leasehold flats, right? So freehold 3-bed semis will outperform a leasehold flat. What's going to happen in the next 10 years? I'm afraid I couldn't say it more often than I say it. I really couldn't. And I posted this on X all the time. It is no longer a safe assumption that property prices go up. You should still buy one. If you want to own a home, if you want to live in a home that you own, you should still buy one. But when you're working out what your maximum comfortable price is for that so that you don't overpay, you should factor in that you cannot assume house prices go up any longer. Factor that in, price accordingly. Maybe they will, but if they do, it'll just be a bonus. What was the other thing I want to talk about this evening? Do I have any other questions? Because if not, I'm not gonna hang around very long this evening. I'm afraid I've got a lot of other commitments as well. So do we have any more questions? Jean-Marc Bordeaux says, what's leasehold reform about? It's about the government continuing what the Tories said they would do, which is reform leasehold and turn it into common hold. They're trying to end it. It's been going in and out of the High Court. The freeholders, so the freeholders of all the London leaseholds went to the High Court to try and block the government's attempts to reform leasehold because it's going to lose them a lot of money, and they lost. They lost their case. If they do manage to reform leasehold and make it a less risky purchase, then I think you'll see flat values bounce back up. But whether or not that's ever going to happen, I don't know. Speedy Hillski says, Charlie, my girlfriend and I are viewing at the moment. Well done. We've looked at 5 houses within a 5-mile area. All of them had issues and were overpriced to what had sold, say, 6 months ago. They had all been on the market for 3 or more months. Market is stale at the moment. What area is this, Speedy Hillski? In our area, 2 separate sites for new builds with 100 houses on each. These companies are using estate agents to advertise their homes. I'm sorry, I thought there was a question coming there. I'd love to know what area that is, Speedy Hillski. No, Jean-Marc Bordeaux, sadly, I'm not off for drinks. I wish I was. Timo2933's question, what time? Yeah, we're 1 week away from the budget, aren't we? So Alex and I are going to be live streaming during the budget live. Hopefully in person, not necessarily, but hopefully in person. And we want to try and make it quite fun. We might have a bit of budget bingo. We might prepare a few things we're expecting or not expecting. I'd like to make it fun because it's going to be a pretty depressing budget. So I want to try and be uplifting about it. Exactly what time we go live, I'm not yet sure, but I will let you know and I'll publish it and we'll schedule it in advance. But yeah, don't miss that. Should be fun. Paul Keenan says, Charlie, pop over to Chard's bullion dealer in Blackpool. They might give you some insight into how busy they are with the capital from landlords in the region cashing in for bullion. Wow. Speedy Hillski, New Forest. Okay, thank you very much. That's where you're saying that they've got hundreds of new builds they're now trying to sell through agents. Okay, question about the no valuations system. Someone called Plant the on YouTube says, where is the equilibrium? Hypothetically, if all agents moved to the no valuation system and timeframes halved and turnovers doubled, surely that will not sustain over a longer time frame. Well, the reason it does sustain is because people would move more frequently if it was easier and had a higher degree of certainty. With such low levels with such low chances of a successful move and such high costs and stamp duty, that kind of stuff, it just puts people off moving at all. It is such a daunting gauntlet that a lot of people go, if we could wave a magic wand and be moved, we'd move, but it's just too risky and stressful. And this is something that the industry itself doesn't listen to. But if you were to go back to 2006 was the most recent peak in transaction volumes. And if you were to extrapolate the transaction volume from then and correct them for population growth since then, transaction volumes today would be at double what they were in 2006. And all that proves is that the demand for moving is there, right? The demand exists for people to move if you make it quicker and easier to move. So if, for example, you end up with an 80% chance of moving within 90 days, a lot more people would do it. And if people stopped overvaluing and just allowed the market to flourish freely, properties would find their prices more quickly. There'd be more choice for buyers. There'd be more buyers for sellers to sell to. It would just be healthier for everyone, including the economy. Yeah, this disaster, the budget is going to be a disaster. That's a good question. JNix6789 says, question, if properties are currently being overvalued, they are, almost all, not all of them, how much higher than my target price of 240k should I set my search range? For example, would it make sense to include houses listed up to 260k? Yeah, but what I would just caveat is if a house has just come onto the market and it's priced well, it will sell quite quickly. If you're looking at properties that have been on the market for 6 months or longer, I'd be looking up to 275. Jean-Marc asks, are they going to mess with council tax valuations in the budget? That is a good question. I don't know. If they do decide to do that, I'm not optimistic that they're going to do it very well, because so far this government hasn't done anything very well. Purple Pepsi, hello, that's a new name, because I'd remember if I'd seen it before. Welcome to the channel. Purple Pepsi says, I've had an offer accepted on my house and have offered on another which has been accepted. The estate agents have told my buyers not to get a solicitor until chain is complete. Is that right? No, that's terrible advice. That's absolutely terrible advice. Who told you? Did the buyers tell you that, or did the estate agents tell you that? That doesn't make any sense to me at all. And as the seller, I'd be very unhappy about that. That doesn't make any sense. If you can find a way to private message me, that I'd love to know what you, or if you're happy to put more details here. That doesn't make any sense to me. If you've had an offer accepted, you want your buyer to proceed without delay, because you want to make sure the buyer is actually going to move. So you want to make sure they get their survey booked, if they're having one, their lender's survey booked, their mortgage in principle, so their mortgage offer for that property approved, their source of funds approved. You want them to instruct conveyancers right now, so that they're ready to exchange like that when your onward purchase works. All right, guys. Any last minute questions? Otherwise, I'm going to chip off early tonight, I'm afraid. I don't want to leave anyone hanging if you've got unanswered questions. I'm dreading this budget. I'm going to try and make fun of it on the day, but I am absolutely dreading the ripple effect of this budget on the economy of this country. I am dreading it. Why? Because you've got a government in power who've got the lowest popularity rating of any government in power for a long time. I mean, it's worse than the Tories. It's disastrously low. They are, in my opinion, panicking. Every lever they try and pull backfires against them. They're claiming credit for things that are nothing to do with what they've done. They know that their survival as a party is counting on this budget, but they don't have the competence. The Treasury has been, I think, infiltrated by ideologists. I think there's infighting in the Labour Party, and so therefore I don't think that this budget is going to serve the country well at all. I think it's going to plunge us into a long recession. That's my worry. I hope I'm wrong. I'll be very happy to be wrong about that. But there we go. Hello, Marcus. Zed Humpy, there's a good name. Another new name. Welcome to the channel. Or if you've been here a long time, thanks for your first question, saying hi. Is it easy to maintain a relationship with an estate agent as a buyer if you're continually making low offers that are not accepted? There are buyers who do that, but they're just piss takers. They don't bother getting anything ready. They haven't demonstrated any actual proceedability by saying, I've got my mortgage in principle ready, I've got my source of funds approved, I'm ready to proceed. So if you're a piss taker, I'm not saying you are, but for those buyers that are just total time wasting piss takers, yeah, it's not going to help your chances. If it is good faith, bona fide offer making, and it's your maximum comfortable price on that particular property, then no, it shouldn't harm. It shouldn't harm the relationship. You just say to the buyer, say, look, the way to solve that problem with an estate agent is say, I will always offer my maximum comfortable price on a property. If I'm the only offer, then genuinely there shouldn't be anyone complaining about my offer level, because I'm offering and no one else is. And if there are other people offering and they're offering more than me, okay, so be it. But this is my offer. Always make your offer. As long as they can see that you are genuinely intending to move and you're actually got some skin in the game, you've made some commitment with your getting your mortgage ready, that kind of stuff, it shouldn't be a problem. Thomas Leather says, what's your biggest anxiety on the budget, at least rumours? I don't have any specific individual thing that I'm worried that they're going to do. I'm worried it's going to be it's just going to be an absolute clusterfuck. I'm worried it's going to be a menu, a litany of bad ideas and bad decisions. I think they will tank the economy, yes. Who's that? I can't pronounce that. Kezati Overco. Rachel Reed is going to implement a Jaffa Cake tax to then bring in an extra biscuit levy. Tea drinkers will be fuming. Glenn Holmes says, will you be recommending agents who use your method? Yes, I will. I definitely will be recommending agents who have actually implemented the no valuations approach, because it always results in a better outcome. Right. Oh, here we are. God, you guys are sneaking the questions in at the end here. Serena Simon says, question, can an agency continue the viewing on property if an offer was accepted and the house is sold subject to contract without letting the buyer know that the house is still being viewed by others? There's no regulation that prevents them from doing that. So technically speaking, yes, they can. If you're a buyer that's worried about that happening, what you should do is say to the buyer that your offer is conditional upon them not doing that. Okay, that's one thing to consider. So you can say, this is my offer, and it's conditional upon the fact that once I've instructed solicitors so that they can see you're actually committed to the transaction, you agree to do no more viewings. And if they do the viewings, and you go, I'm going to pull out. I'm not going to continue with the transaction if there's a risk of me losing to someone else. It's just, I'm not recommending you do that. I'm saying you should consider doing that. But yeah, there's nothing, you can't stop them doing it. Marchin, I don't know the answer to your question. I'm not going to take that one because I just don't know. I need to think about that. All right, guys. I am going to wrap up and remind all of you, especially the new followers, and I've got lots of new subscribers on YouTube, lots of new followers on X. Welcome, everybody. And to all of you who are new here, let me just remind you, I think a lot of people follow me because of posts I'm making on X. My objective, I think everyone should have a home, right? Everyone has a right to a home. Everyone should be able to own a home. If you're working and earning median wages, you should be able to afford a home. Everyone should, if you can't afford to buy one, you should be able to rent one affordably as well. The things that I believe in to support those are not necessarily conventional. They're neither right wing nor left wing, and I have a lot of views that people on both sides disagree with. And whenever I put a view that disagrees with left wing people, I get called right wing, and vice versa. I've been called an extreme right wing, and I'm really not, because I do believe in extremely good welfare for a limited, specific number of people. I don't agree with such easy welfare that there's no incentive to work. I absolutely, it's deplorable to see this huge sort of uprising against so-called rich people, like they're somehow evil, like they're somehow taking money from poor people, which they're not. Because if you go and look at it, prosperity, which is what's required to improve home ownership, only exists when there is a strong jobs market, right? When there's a strong jobs market, employers have to compete for people, and therefore wages go up. And when there's general prosperity, and then that's when it lifts everybody, everyone's situation improves, your living situation improves, your cost of living decreases. But that prosperity, the only sustainable source of prosperity, is from private sector businesses. And all private sector businesses are started by a combination of wealthy people investing their money and risking it, and business founders risking their time on a startup. And without those two things happening, jobs don't get created. And so this sort of weird jeering and cheering because there are rich people leaving the country, I mean, it's so self-defeatist if you want to have a better chance of owning a home. Because whether house prices come down or wages go up, the effect is the same. And what happens to house prices is affected more by government policy than anything else. What happens to wages is affected by business. And what this government's doing is saying it wants growth and then doing the opposite. We really want growth. We really want growth. We really want growth. But we're going to implement policies that will, with mathematical certainty, do the opposite of getting growth. Now, there are only two explanations for that. Either they are really fucking stupid, or they're lying when they say they want growth and they actually want to crush the private sector. I don't know which it is. Wanting a healthy job market requires wanting a good environment for new businesses to start up, for which you need risk takers, which is young people that aren't rich yet, willing to take risks, and for which you need capital. In other words, rich people. Being rich is good, being poor is bad. We should want more rich people because that creates more jobs. It's nothing to do with trickle down. It's basic fucking fact. You can't get an increase in jobs without the private sector creating those jobs. Do you understand that? Like, jobs, the public sector is very fixed. It doesn't create growth. The public sector's role is to help create a safe environment for the private sector to flourish, because the public sector doesn't operate for profit. And without profit, you don't get investment, right? And without investment, you don't get jobs. So for everybody of any political persuasion to want to have the prospect of owning a home or being able to afford to rent comfortably, you need a better jobs market. And that only comes from wealthy people and risk takers starting businesses. There is no other source of a flourishing jobs market, right? There is no other source. There is no other way to create a flourishing jobs market other than businesses starting up and businesses growing. There's no argument to that. There's no counter argument to that. And yet we see this massive increase in resentment towards risk takers and resentment towards the rich. And therefore, and this breaks my heart, because as someone who wants more people to own a home and to be able to afford a decent life, it's like watching people punching themselves in the face and shooting themselves in the foot. And, you know, I deplore work-shy layabouts. I don't mean people who've lost their jobs and they're getting universal credit because they've lost a job. I mean skivers, right? We all know them. And I worry that the pandemic created a spike in people who got used to furlough, handouts, government money, etc. And there's a whole generation of people who just, it's also true and fair to say that the conditions are not appealing for people to go out and work now. This is government policy being the problem, right? The conditions to go out and work are not appealing. And if you can't go and get a job that means you can afford a nice home, then where is the motivation to work? But until that improves, the only chance you've got of getting a nice home is to work harder than average, to go the extra mile compared to other people. That's not how it should be. Definitely isn't how it should be, right? Anyone who is a reliable, decent, honest employee, gets up and goes to work every day, does a good job and comes home, should be able to afford a decent family life. Everyone and anyone, provided you're working and contributing, right? And that's not the case at the moment. And that is decades of bad government policy. But I'm going to finish up with this. The solution to this problem is not arguing and name calling and bitch fighting. It's just not. The solution to this problem is for everyone to understand that only policy making solves this problem. There's no point in blaming him or blaming her or saying he's a Nazi or he's a Marxist. There's just no point in that. All of that makes this problem worse. For us to see an improvement, we've got to start focusing as people, as citizens, on the policies and the policy makers. That is the only way out of this shithole. And on that happy note, guys, I'm going to say thank you very much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Good night.